Sam stood at the edge of his porch, his arms crossed as he watched Myra climb the wooden ladder. The sun had gone down an hour earlier, and the wide ranch sky had turned dark blue. Stars glimmered faintly above, but Myra wanted more brightness. She wanted their small home to glow with light. She believed lights brought warmth to the heart, even when the nights were cold. Myra carefully hung a string of golden lights along the edge of the roof. The bulbs shone softly in the night, and Sam felt a sense of peace. Their house sat near the center of the neighborhood, a modest ranch home with a wide front porch. Myra often said that a house with no light looked lonely, and she never wanted their place to look lonely. Sam smiled as she laughed when a breeze shook the ladder slightly. Myra always found joy in small things, and that joy filled Sam with calm. He stayed close in case she needed his help. Then, the sound of a truck broke the peace. Headlights appeared down the narrow road, cutting through the dark. A plain pickup rolled slowly toward the house. Sam thought at first it might be a neighbor returning home, but the truck stopped right in front of their yard. Two men stepped out. Both wore dark uniforms that looked official, though Sam had never seen such uniforms before. Each man carried a badge pinned to his chest. The taller one walked ahead with a stern face. His voice was firm as he called out, "You need to stop putting those lights up. You are in violation of HOA rules." Sam frowned and stepped forward. "What violation are you talking about?" The man held up his badge. The words on it read HOA Patrol. Sam had never heard of an HOA Patrol before. The man explained that new rules had been passed about decorations, and Myra was breaking them. Myra, still on the ladder, looked down with confusion. "These are just porch lights. I am not hurting anyone. I am only making the house look warm." The second man walked closer, his eyes scanning the ladder and the lights as if she had committed a crime. He spoke in a sharp voice. "You must remove them now. If you do not, we will have to enforce the rule." Sam stepped between them and the ladder. His voice grew firm. "This is my property. If you have a rule, show me the paper. Show me the law that says my wife cannot hang lights." The taller man did not show any paper. Instead, he moved quickly. In one sudden step, he reached up toward Myra as she climbed down and grabbed her wrist. Before Sam could react, a pair of metal cuffs clicked around her hand. Myra gasped in shock. The neighbors across the street, hearing the noise, came outside. They saw Myra sitting on the porch step with her wrist cuffed. Sam shouted, demanding the men release her. The taller man spoke again in a cold tone. "She has broken HOA rules. This is enforcement." Sam's chest burned with anger. His voice rose. "You have no right to put cuffs on her. You are not police. You are not law." More neighbors gathered, whispering among themselves. Some took out their phones and began recording. The plain truck, the odd uniforms, the strange badges, and Myra's wrist in cuffs all painted a picture that felt wrong. The neighborhood buzzed with confusion and disbelief. Sam called the police at once. He also tried reaching the HOA office, but no one answered. Within minutes, a real patrol car arrived. Officer Khan, a local officer known in the area, stepped out. His eyes narrowed as soon as he saw Myra in cuffs. "What is going on here?" he asked firmly. The men in uniforms straightened up, showing their badges again. "We are HOA Patrol. We are enforcing rules." Officer Khan studied the badges carefully. Then his expression hardened. "There is no HOA Patrol in this town. These badges are false. You have no authority to touch anyone here." He removed the cuffs from Myra's wrist and helped her stand. Sam's hands shook with anger and relief as he placed his arm around Myra. The officer turned back to the men. "You need to leave now. This is not your role. We will investigate this further." The two men did not argue. They climbed back into their plain truck and drove away without a word. The sound of the engine faded down the road, leaving behind silence and unease. Neighbors crowded around Sam and Myra, asking if they were all right. Phones buzzed as people replayed the videos they had taken. Myra rubbed her wrist and shook her head, still in shock. She had never imagined hanging lights could lead to such a moment. Officer Khan stayed with them a while, taking notes and asking questions. He explained that what the men had done was unlawful. They had no real authority, and the badges were likely fake. He promised he would look deeper into who they were and why they had acted that way. Sam thanked the officer, though his heart still burned. He had never felt so powerless, watching strangers put cuffs on Myra for something so simple. His trust in the HOA cracked that night. He wondered how two men could appear in uniforms, claim authority, and act as if they ruled the neighborhood. As the neighbors slowly returned to their homes, Sam and Myra stayed on the porch. The golden lights still hung across the roof, glowing softly. They looked harmless and peaceful, yet those lights had been enough to bring trouble to their door. Sam stood in the quiet night, the cool wind brushing his face. He made a silent promise to himself. This would not end here. He would not allow fear and false power to rule their lives. He would protect Myra, protect his home, and protect his neighbors. The night had started with joy and light, but it ended with anger and questions. And Sam knew that answers must be found before the next storm arrived. Sam did not sleep that night. After the strange men left and the officer promised to investigate, Sam sat on the porch staring at the golden lights. The house glowed softly in the dark, but his heart did not feel calm. Myra had gone inside to rest, yet he could see that she was troubled too. She had rubbed her wrist again and again, as if the memory of the cold metal cuffs would not leave her. The quiet of the ranch street felt different now. Every sound made Sam alert. A barking dog, a car passing in the distance, the wind shaking the branches. He wondered if the men would return. He wondered if there were more of them. Most of all, he wondered how they could walk so boldly into his yard and pretend to have power. When dawn came, Sam rose early. He walked the yard and looked at the porch from every angle. The ladder still leaned against the house, and the lights still hung across the roof. He wanted to take them down to ease Myra's worry, but at the same time, he felt that leaving them there was an act of strength. These lights had started the trouble, yet they also showed that his family would not be controlled by fear. Myra came outside with 2 mugs of warm tea. She placed one in Sam's hand and sat beside him on the porch step. Her face looked pale but calm. "Sam," she said softly, "we cannot let this go. If we stay silent, they will do this to someone else. Maybe next time it will be worse." Sam nodded. "I know. But we need to be careful. We cannot fight shadows with anger. We need proof. We need truth." At that moment, their neighbor Luis walked across the yard. Luis was an older man who lived alone with his tools and machines. He was quiet and steady, always fixing something in his shed. He had seen what happened the night before and had filmed part of it with his small drone camera. Luis lifted a small black case and opened it. Inside was the drone, a tiny machine with spinning blades and a small lens. "This little thing can watch better than eyes," he said. "If they come again, or if they move around the neighborhood, we can see them. We can gather what we need." Sam's eyes lit up with new hope. That could help us. We cannot face them with words alone. We need to show everyone what is happening. The three of them spent the morning flying the drone. Luis guided it with steady hands, sending it above rooftops and over fences. The cameras showed the quiet streets, the parked cars, the backyards with gardens and sheds. At first it seemed ordinary. Children played with a ball, a woman watered her plants, a dog chased birds. But soon they spotted something unusual. The same plane pickup that had arrived last night appeared again, rolling slowly through another street. The two men in uniform stepped out and walked to a house. They spoke to a family, pointed at decorations on the porch, and wrote something in a small notebook. The family looked uneasy but did not argue. Sam and Myra watched the screen. Their hearts grew heavy. This was not a single mistake. These men were repeating the same act across the neighborhood. Luis saved the footage. Then they followed the pickup with the drone. The men drove across 3 more streets, stopping at 2 other homes. Each time they acted with authority, waving their false badges and writing notes. None of the families resisted, perhaps too afraid or unsure of their rights. Finally, the men drove to a small office near the edge of town. The drone showed them walking inside. A sign above the door read Community Association Office. It was the same building where the HOA board met each month. Myra shook her head. So they are linked to the board. Maybe the board gave them permission. Sam clenched his fist. Or maybe the board does not even know. Either way, we cannot wait. We need to bring this to the real police. That afternoon, Sam and Myra visited Officer Khan at the local station. They showed him the footage from the drone. Khan watched closely, his eyes narrowing at every moment. This is good evidence, he said. These men are acting under false authority. Their badges are not legal, and they have no right to touch people. But I need to know who gave them these uniforms. If they are tied to the HOA board, then this is bigger than just 2 men. He promised to add the drone videos to his report. He also warned Sam to stay alert. Do not confront them yourself. They are bold because they think no one will stop them. But the law will stop them once we have enough proof. Sam left the station with mixed feelings. He felt stronger knowing the officer believed them, yet he also felt restless. Waiting was never easy. The next few days, Sam, Myra, and Luis continued watching. The drone flew each morning and evening. They learned the men's routine. They saw when the truck entered and left the neighborhood. They even saw where the men stopped for coffee each day. Slowly, the pieces formed a clear picture. One evening, Sam visited another neighbor, Clara. She had 3 children and had always been friendly with Myra. Clara admitted that the men had visited her 2 days earlier. They told her that her children's bikes left in the yard were against HOA rules. She had been so frightened by their tone that she quickly moved the bikes inside. They made me feel like a criminal, Clara said. I did not argue because I thought they had power. But now I see they were false. Her story matched what the drone had shown. Sam wrote down every detail. More neighbors began to share similar accounts. A picture of fear and silence spread across the community. By the end of the week, Sam had collected enough stories and footage to see the truth. The men were not acting alone. They had access to board offices, they carried lists of homes, and they followed a pattern that seemed planned. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the lights on the porch glowed again, Sam sat with Myra and Luis. The 3 of them looked at the files, the notes, and the drone videos. Sam spoke with quiet strength. We are gathering shadows, but soon the shadows will turn into clear shapes. When the truth is shown, the whole town will see who these men are and why they came. We are not weak. We are not alone. We have each other, and we have the truth. Myra placed her hand on his and nodded. Luis gave a small smile. The porch light flickered gently, casting a warm glow on their faces. The fear of the first night still lingered, but now it was joined by determination. The men had come to control through false power, but the community had begun to watch, to listen, and to prepare. The battle was no longer about lights on a porch. It was about dignity, safety, and truth. And Sam knew that the real fight was only beginning. The next week brought more tension to the neighborhood. Every evening, as the sun went down and the porch lights came on, people spoke in low voices about the two strange men. Some neighbors wanted to forget what had happened, fearing trouble if they resisted. Others whispered about standing together. Sam knew silence would only invite more fear. He sat on the porch with Myra one evening, looking at the files and videos spread across the small table. The drone footage showed the men's routine with clear detail. It also showed their visits to the HOA office. Sam kept asking himself one question. Were the board members behind this, or had the men acted on their own? Myra poured tea and sat beside him. Her wrist had healed, but she still remembered the shame of being cuffed. She spoke softly but firmly. If we wait too long, the truth will fade. We must act while people still remember what they saw. Sam agreed. But we need a way to show everything at once. If we go house to house, the board will deny it. If we argue in small groups, rumors will twist the truth. We need one clear moment when no one can hide. It was Myra who suggested the idea first. She said the next HOA meeting would be the perfect time. All board members would be there, and many neighbors would attend to hear about new rules. If they prepared carefully, they could reveal the truth before everyone at once. Sam thought about it for a long moment. He imagined the faces of the neighbors when they saw the footage. He imagined the board members trying to explain. It felt risky, but it also felt powerful. Luis joined them later that night. He listened to the idea and nodded slowly. If you want to reveal the truth, I can prepare the drone videos for a clear presentation. We can connect the drone to a screen and show everything. The images will speak louder than words. Sam leaned forward. Good. We will also invite the reporter from town. If she streams the meeting live, the board will not be able to hide behind closed doors. Over the next few days, they worked in quiet determination. Luis edited the drone footage, adding dates and times so no one could question its accuracy. Myra wrote a speech, short and simple, so everyone could understand. Sam collected the written accounts from neighbors like Clara, who had been pressured by the false patrol. Sam also visited Officer Khan again. The officer listened to their plan and gave his support. He promised to attend the meeting himself. When I stand there in uniform, Khan said, people will know the law is watching. The men who acted with false badges will not escape. The night of the meeting arrived. The community room was filled with chairs, and every seat was taken. Families stood at the back, and children sat quietly near their parents. The air was heavy with expectation. People knew something unusual was about to happen. At the front of the room sat the HOA board. Mr. Harlan, the president, wore his usual calm smile. He greeted people politely, though his eyes looked sharp. Beside him sat the other board members, flipping through papers and whispering to one another. Sam stood near the side with Myra and Luis. The reporter set up her camera at the back, ready to stream. Officer Khan sat quietly in uniform, waiting for the right moment. The meeting began as usual. Harlan spoke about community safety and new proposals for property care. His voice was steady, but Sam noticed how often he glanced at the crowd. He seemed aware of the tension in the room. Finally, when Harlan asked if anyone had matters to raise, Sam stepped forward. His voice carried across the room. "Yes, I have something to share. It concerns the false patrol that came to our homes." A ripple of whispers filled the room. Harlan raised his hand. "We have already said that incident was a misunderstanding. Let us move on." Sam did not step back. Instead, he signaled to Louise. The drone footage began to play on the screen. At once, the room fell silent. The video showed the plane pickup, the uniforms, the way the men walked to houses, the way they flashed badges. It showed their stops at the HOA office. Gasps spread through the crowd. People leaned forward to see. Some pointed at the screen, whispering that the same men had visited them too. Sam spoke clearly. "These men came to my home and put cuffs on my wife for hanging lights. They came to other homes as well. They claimed to have power, but they carried false badges. They acted as if they ruled us, but they are not law. Here is proof." Myra stepped beside him and read the short speech she had prepared. Her voice shook at first, but grew stronger as she spoke of fear, of shame, and of dignity. She told them how the men had tried to make her small, and how neighbors had begun to live in silence. Officer Khan then rose. His uniform shone under the lights. "What you have seen is real," he said firmly. "The badges are false. These men are not authorized by law. We are investigating their connection to this office. Until then, no one here should believe they have power." The room erupted with voices. Some shouted at the board, demanding answers. Others called for justice. The reporters' cameras streamed everything live to the town. Harlan tried to speak, but his voice trembled. "This is not the way to handle matters. You are causing panic. We will review this internally." Sam faced him directly. "No. The time for hidden rooms and quiet rules is over. The truth belongs to everyone." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Their calm masks cracked under the weight of the crowd's anger. The meeting had shifted. The people were no longer afraid. They had seen the proof with their own eyes. As the meeting ended in chaos, Sam stood quietly with Myra and Louise. Their plan had worked. The truth had been shown, not whispered but spoken loudly for all. Yet Sam knew this was only the first step. The shadows had been revealed, but the source of power behind the men was still hidden. Myra held his hand. Her voice was steady. "We have opened the door. Now we must walk through it." Sam nodded. The light from the screen still glowed in his eyes. For the first time in days, he felt hope. The community had seen, and once people saw, they could not return to silence. The night outside was dark, but the porch lights across the neighborhood now shone brighter than ever. They were no longer decorations. They were signs of unity. Signs that the people were ready to stand together. The HOA meeting left the neighborhood buzzing for days. Everyone who had been there kept talking about the video, the speech, and Officer Khan's words. Those who missed it watched the live stream later. The image of the men flashing false badges and walking into homes was burned into people's minds. Sam and Myra walked through the streets the next morning and saw something new. Neighbors greeted them with nods, waves, and quiet words of support. People who once kept their heads down now wanted to share their stories. They spoke about how the men had threatened them, how they felt powerless, and how they now felt braver because the truth was out. But the board stayed silent. Harlan and the other members gave no statements. The HOA office door remained locked most of the week, with a small note saying meetings were postponed. This silence only raised more questions. Officer Khan did not remain silent. He gathered evidence, used the drone videos, and asked witnesses for written statements. With this collection, he obtained warrants from the court. One morning, real officers drove to the pickup truck parked near the HOA office. They opened the truck and searched it carefully. Sam and Myra stood at a distance with other neighbors, watching. Inside the truck, the officers found more fake badges, notebooks filled with house numbers, and a box of receipts. The receipts showed payments to a private security firm. Alongside these, the officers discovered keys to a storage unit outside town. The discovery spread quickly. The storage unit was searched next. Inside, the officers found uniforms, more handcuffs, and a strange collection of motorcycles. 17 Harley bikes lined the unit in 2 neat rows. Their polished metal shone under the light. Each bike had the same design, black and red with a symbol painted on the side. The crowd that had followed the officers gasped when the doors of the unit opened. Why would 2 men pretending to be patrol officers have so many motorcycles locked away? It made no sense at first. The officers carried everything out piece by piece. Each item was documented and photographed. The bikes were loaded onto trailers and driven to the police yard for safekeeping. The law now had control over the false patrol's tools. That evening, the local news reported the story. The footage of officers rolling out the Harleys appeared on every screen in town. The reporter explained that the bikes had been used as intimidation. They were placed in certain spots around the neighborhood, close to homes that resisted the board. The sudden presence of large motorcycles outside a house sent a message, one that scared families into silence. Sam and Myra sat on their porch watching the broadcast with Louise. Myra shook her head slowly. They wanted fear to live in this neighborhood. They used noise and power to make people feel small. Sam's jaw tightened. But fear has a short life when truth walks in. Now the court will decide what to do with all of it. The next day, the court held a hearing. Sam and Myra attended with many other neighbors. Inside the small courthouse, the judge listened to Officer Khan's report and examined the evidence. The false badges, the notebooks, the receipts, and the row of motorcycles painted a clear picture. The 2 men were brought in under guard. Their faces were stiff and cold, but their silence could not erase what had been found. The judge ordered the Harleys seized as evidence. They would remain in custody of the town until the case ended. The crowd murmured with relief. The loud machines that once brought fear now stood locked behind safe gates. Mr. Harlan was also called to speak. His voice was less steady than before. He claimed the men had been hired for security without his full knowledge. He said the motorcycles were not connected to the board's decisions. But the judge noted that the receipts linked directly to accounts tied to the HOA office. Neighbors who once respected Harlan now looked at him with distrust. Whispers filled the courthouse hall after the hearing. People no longer saw him as a leader. They saw him as a man who had allowed fear to grow. When the hearing ended, Sam and Myra walked home with Louise and Clara. The evening sky glowed orange. Children ran ahead, laughing, free from the shadow of the patrol. Clara smiled for the first time in weeks. It feels lighter now. Like a heavy hand has been lifted. Sam nodded, though his mind still carried questions. The bikes were gone, the men were under arrest, but the deeper truth had not yet surfaced. Who had truly planned all this? Who had given the orders that night? Sam sat on the porch again. The golden lights above the roof glowed gently, as they had on the first night of trouble. He thought about the Harleys, once used to frighten, now locked away as evidence. He thought about the court, which had acted firmly. Myra joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "We are moving forward, Sam. Step by step. The fear is weaker now." "Yes," Sam said quietly. "But we cannot rest yet. We must make sure it never returns. The shadow is thinner, but it is not gone." The next week proved his words true. The town council announced a full review of the HOA board. Elections would be held again, this time under watch of the law. The board members avoided public places, while neighbors met openly to plan for fair leadership. The Harleys were shown one last time to the public before being moved to a secure site. People gathered to look at them, not with fear but with curiosity. The machines no longer carried power. They were just metal waiting for judgment. Sam stood among the crowd, watching the sunlight bounce off the polished chrome. He realized something then. Symbols only had power when people gave them power. Those motorcycles had once been symbols of fear. Now, they were only evidence of wrongdoing. Myra took his hand. "They tried to make us feel small, but we grew larger. They tried to scare us, but we found courage. They tried to hide in shadows, but we brought light." Sam smiled at her words. The plan of light had worked, but another step remained. The final judgment would come, not just for the men with badges, but for the board that had let fear rule. The neighborhood waited, no longer silent, no longer afraid. The shadow was lifting, but the story was not yet complete. The weeks that followed the seizure of the motorcycles brought new life into the neighborhood. What once felt heavy now seemed lighter. People opened their windows more often, children played freely in the streets, and neighbors spoke with each other without fear. The false patrol was gone, and the sound of engines no longer echoed at night. Sam walked down the street early each morning. He noticed changes that filled him with quiet pride. Gardens that had been left untended were now cared for again. Families painted fences and repaired porches. Laughter carried from one yard to another. The simple joy of normal life had returned. Yet Sam knew the story was not finished. The trial of the two men and the review of the HOA board had not yet taken place. Until then, a shadow remained, even if it was small. He felt it when he passed the locked HOA office, the blinds drawn tight, the building quiet. The silence of that place was a reminder of what had been allowed to grow in the dark. Myra saw the same thing. She spent time each afternoon with Clara, Luis, and other neighbors, helping them write petitions for change. She spoke with calm strength, guiding others to share their thoughts and dreams for a fairer community. The people listened to her, not because she shouted, but because her voice carried hope. One evening, the town council announced a public assembly in the park. It was the same place where Sam had once placed the lights in the trees, the same place where fear had been broken by truth. Now the park would serve again, this time as a place of decision. The assembly drew a large crowd. Families came with chairs and blankets, filling the grass. The air was alive with energy, both nervous and excited. On the stage, council members prepared to speak, with Officer Khan standing nearby. When the council leader stepped forward, the noise quieted. His voice carried across the park: "This neighborhood has faced a test. Fear was planted here, but you stood together and pulled it out. Now we move to a new chapter. the HOA board has been suspended, and an election will be held. This time, it will be fair, open, and free. The words struck the crowd like a spark. Cheers rose into the evening air. Neighbors clapped, whistled, and shouted with relief. Children danced in the grass, not fully understanding, but feeling the joy of the moment. Sam stood with Myra, their hands joined. They looked around at the faces lit by the golden lamps above the park. Hope was no longer a dream. It was here, alive, and visible in every smile. In the days that followed, names were put forward for the new board. For the first time, the process was clear. Candidates spoke openly, sharing their ideas for the future. Some wanted more community projects, others wanted fair rules that respected freedom. Everyone agreed on one point: never again would fear rule over the neighborhood. Myra was asked to stand as a candidate. At first, she hesitated. She told Sam she only wanted to help in small ways, not lead. But Sam reminded her of how people already listened to her, how her calm strength had guided them when fear was at its worst. "You are already leading, Myra," Sam said gently. "The people trust you. They see your light." She thought about his words for many days. Finally, she agreed. Her name was placed among the candidates, and her presence brought even more energy to the process. Clara and Louise supported her fully, helping spread her message. Election day came with bright skies. The park once again filled with families, each person carrying a ballot. Tables were set up, and volunteers guided the process. There was no shouting, no pushing, no intimidation. The vote was calm and fair. When the ballots were counted, Myra's name stood at the top. The crowd cheered as her victory was announced. She stepped onto the stage, her face calm, her eyes shining. Sam stood among the people, his chest full of pride. Her speech was simple. "This neighborhood belongs to all of us. It is not a place of fear, but of family. We will work together, we will listen to each other, and we will never let shadows take our light again." The people clapped, and many cried softly. They knew this was not just a speech but a promise. With Myra as part of the new board, change began quickly. The old HOA office was reopened, but its doors were now transparent glass, and meetings were held in the open. Decisions were shared with everyone. No rule was passed without the voices of the people. Sam continued his part, walking the streets, talking with neighbors, and fixing small problems with his own hands. He never sought attention, but people respected him. They remembered the night he placed the lights in the trees, the night the shadow began to lift. The trial of the two men ended with a firm judgment. They were found guilty of fraud and intimidation. The motorcycles were sold, and the money went back to the community. With those funds, the neighborhood built a new playground for the children. Where fear had once stood, laughter now filled the air. One evening, Sam and Myra sat on their porch together. The golden lights above the roof glowed softly, just as they had on that first night. But the feeling was different now. The lights no longer served as a warning. They were a symbol of what had been won. Myra leaned against Sam. "Do you feel it, Sam? The peace is real now. The shadow is gone." He nodded slowly. "Yes. We stood together, and we did not break. We found light, and we kept it." Across the street, Clara and Louise sat with their children, laughing as the little ones ran barefoot in the grass. Music played softly from another house. A breeze carried the scent of flowers, freshly planted by neighbors who now had the courage to dream again. The neighborhood no longer feared the sound of engines or the sight of badges. Instead, they remembered the power of unity, the strength of truth, and the courage of ordinary people. Sam looked out over the street and thought of the future. There would always be challenges, always tests. But he knew now that the people could face anything, as long as they stood together. The lights shone above, steady and warm. The new dawn had come, not with noise or power, but with courage, unity, and hope. And this time, the light would remain.